Yay, awesome. So I think I'm going to pass it on to Maya to do the demo. Maya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So last week, I guess Maria and was it Jackie had reached out and like asked me to do a demo on GRPC. There wasn't a lot of, let's say, guidance around like what to present on, and so I picked one of the projects that I've been working on for the last couple of years. I dropped a link to the presentation slide deck in the Meetup notes, so if you're looking at those, you can kind of follow along. But yeah, let's see, present now. And parallax for a minute. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So I don't even know where to like really begin with this, but I have recently latched onto some kind of fun experiments where I've been taking kind of common algorithms and implementing them over gRPC stream APIs. A lot of it started back when, well, I guess let me kind of first introduce myself. So like I said earlier, my name's Maya. My pronouns are she and her. I've been working with gRPC for a very long time. My current company, effx, uses it pretty heavily. I've only been here for like 2 weeks, so there's not much I can really speak on in terms of like what we have available. But I got started back on the project in, I want to say it was like 2016-ish, when I first initiated kind of our migration to that and deprecating our internal boxcar library back at Indeed. Over time, I like really latched onto the library and wanted to use it for some of the open source projects. And so I kind of picked it for the foundations for the system that we'll be talking about today. So DeskCloud's project I've been iterating on for, like I said, like 2 years or so. It's pretty heavily inspired on a system I wrote previously at Indeed and the library's IO project. It had 2 key kind of goals in mind. One, be a lot more portable than the former options, and then make it a lot easier to use. And what it does is it lets you kind of track how projects depend on one another by kind of inferring relationships through their kind of package manifest files. Like in Node.js, it'd be package.json. In Go, it'd be go.mod, so on and so forth. So the types of things that the system can kind of like help you answer is what versions of like client Go are you depending on for Kubernetes? Who's using projects like ESLint at a non-dev dependency? What open source libraries does our company use the most? And then even kind of looking at it from just more of a generic standpoint, like what projects depend on some specific internal library, what version are they using? And a lot of that can be great for like addressing CVEs that are kind of scattered throughout your stack. So like I said, it's able to do a lot of this by constructing a graph of information. I hope most people here understand what graphs are, but just in case, it's an abstract data type. There's kind of 2 types of things that you typically interact with, nodes and edges. Edges are used to represent the association between the nodes. Some characteristics about graphs are often that they're directed or undirected. In this case, on the right-hand side, we have an undirected graph. We could make statements like A and B are connected, B and C are connected, A and C are connected, so on and so forth. DeskCloud uses a specific type of graph, a dependency graph, which is intended to model the dependencies between objects. So A needs B and C, B needs D, and C needs D. The common use case for being able to have a dependency graph at hand is to obtain an evaluation order, or commonly referred to as like a topological sort. Some characteristics about the dependency graph is that it's directed and often potentially cyclic. I say potentially because most dependency resolution schemes have mechanisms to like detect cycles, but for some subset of systems, you can't make that guarantee all the way across, and so we end up having to account for potential cycles in the graph. The rough data model for the system looks kind of something like this. We track everything from the project that we discover these libraries from to the different dependencies. And I think at one point I had this as like, this is kind of a simple representation because we're really only taking 2 sources into consideration, when in practice you often need to take in a lot more than 2 or 3 repositories. Kind of getting back to the earlier point of wanting it to be portable, most companies do not run with a graph database at hand, and I didn't really want to kind of bank on that expertise. So I really wanted a system that would just leverage, your common relational solution. So we have support for Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, and then that even kind of goes off into the world of, well, we also kind of support CockroachDB, Vitess, and some of the newer like cloud native type solutions. Our schema, unlike a lot of the other graph schemas that you might see out there, is all stored in a single table, and I'll kind of talk about that in a minute. If you were to like think about the data representation in terms of like an Excel sheet or something like that, this is kind of how the data ends up getting laid out. One of the nice things about this schema is that the nodes and their corresponding edges are all kind of grouped together on disk, which makes a lot of the lookups really, really efficient. So yeah, why did I choose gRPC for the project? Probably the biggest thing was both of the previous systems were implemented using REST, and both kind of had their limitations in terms of what we could really implement in the end. One of the biggest lessons that we learned was having that topological sort function be done as kind of a unary type call, where it was getting all buffered on the server. Like predicting the memory usage for that was really hard to do. And it would often result in like killing the process and then needing to reallocate more memory, so on and so forth. So we were really looking to look support for multiple. So really more of a system. The big reason there was like extracting all these different manifest files. I found like parsing the file syntax and kind of like extracting metadata was a lot easier to do in something like TypeScript versus like a more statically typed language like Go or Java or so on and so forth. So with that, let's kind of like walk through a demo. I've got a whole bunch of links dropped in the speaker notes that you can kind of look through. There's an internal API that I refer to as like the graph store, which just more or less exposes that, what do you call it? API that is really just, put in the edges or the nodes, delete the edges or the nodes, give me the neighbors, and then what I kind of call this arbitrary traverse function. And if you really break down, whether you're talking about breadth first search, depth first search, or any kind of sequence, you're really just passing along a series of like, give me the neighbors for, such and such. So if we're not super familiar, like at a visual.
Maya, would we be able to make the font bigger on this for us to see?
I sure can. I did with literally everything else but my browser. If I remember correctly, one of these has kind of a nice GIF of kind of how breadth first search works, right? So we start at the root and then we go down layer by layer. So we go to A, then we do B, D, E, F, G, so on and so forth. What's kind of nice about this is you can kind of flush at each stage in breadth first search. And so it made it kind of nice to implement over a stream API. So similarly, we had a public API that actually provided both those semantics by default. Kind of just show a little bit of the server code. I know a lot of the requests that I see come through on like help channels are around like how do you kind of handle, the handoff between client and server with regards to kind of the stream-based processing. Eric's talk from like 2018 does a really good job talking about like when your kind of client isn't sending data, it should be pulling data, and like when your server is not pulling data, it should be sending data. So this is kind of more or less the setup for it all. You see kind of the same type of thing where you would initialize your breadth first search using a queue, start to slowly walk and process the requests as they came off the stream. And then as you got data back, you would flush the responses back to the client. And then I even built in kind of a nice little interrupt type of component where if somebody used depth first search or breadth first search to say find a very specific node, they could actually terminate or short circuit from the client's perspective. So again, like on the client, when we implement the breadth first search, we send along our kind of route, and then we just sit here and buffer all the response data back. How does this end up kind of looking to users? Well, the nice thing is, for the most part, like people don't realize that it's implemented that way under the hood. So we just give people some very simple command line tools. We can let people grab dependents for libraries. So I'm going to use GRPC as an example here. And I loaded this thing some fun data. So it'll be really interesting to see some of the stuff we get back. So we can see who's kind of using GRPC currently across the public projects that I have indexed. We get a lot of things back, and part of that's because we don't have a lot of great server-side filtering right now, but you can really start to see like which projects are using GRPC, from like HashiCorp's Vault project to Sentinel, Linkerd, Giant Swarm, so on and so forth. And these are just all the projects that actually have an explicit dependency on the gRPC Go project. Like I said earlier, one of the common things is to be able to pull something like a build topology or the kind of correct ordering. At Indeed, we were using this to kind of do things like automatically rebuild the world for all of the dependencies of G. So this will actually pull that go and look at the topological sort logic. Again, I linked that in the speaker notes on the slide deck. But yeah, you can see it's used pretty heavily in and you're doing like you have to parallelize things to some extent, and so we built a tiered component in here, which does still return the correct ordering, but for things that fall in the same level, those components can actually be built at the same time. And so once we get this response back,
Mya,
we can actually throw this.
Would you be able to go back and repeat a few things that the last bit that you shared, because you were breaking up and it wasn't clear what you said?
Oh, sure. Let me turn off my video first, so that way we don't have that happen again. Okay, so backing up a little bit. So the one of the early use cases for this project was like upgrading the Java Spring library across several thousand repos. And when I had initially kind of went down to do that, doing things one by one wasn't going to be enough. And so I had to build in kind of this concept of a tiered topology, which uses the same correct ordering as kind of your topological sort. But when things fall on the same tier, that is when things have no incoming dependencies, they're able to kind of be built together. So we guarantee things that are like within this tier have no conflicts with one another and could be built in parallel. Same thing here. So anything inside of this tier we can build in parallel. But that's kind of some of the more like original use cases. I think some of the ways that the system has evolved more recently has been interesting, kind of from like an open source programs office perspective. Let's see. I think that's really all I wanted to show here. Let me see. So kind of getting back to the presentation. A few pieces of technology that we do use from the gRPC community, gRPC Go pretty heavily, as well as gRPC Node. There's a few things that I kind of forked off and did on my own in the Node community, just because it's been harder to, well, one, it's only one of my services, so it's not like the bulk of functionality, and I'm able to kind of implement in a common way. It's kind of like the oddball, and so part of me is like not sure how to contribute some of that back. The other projects that I pull from in the ecosystem are the Gateway project, which provides kind of a REST API translation for the functions that are supported over REST. It's not the recommended way I go. We usually just tell people to use the gRPC interface because there's kind of good enough support for load balancers these days that you don't have to be as cognizant of the HTTP1 downgrades. I also use the Prometheus and middleware projects, and then we used to use the Health Probe ones. Some of the projects that I've been kind of working on in addition to this is I started a gRPC JSON library with a bunch of kind of common metrics that come from the gRPC Prometheus monitoring. So you can like quickly get a metrics dashboard up and running. You can kind of toggle different selectors to see how systems are performing in different ways. And then I also have a health check library that kind of plugs in nicely with Go's or with the gRPC one as well. This is that dashboard that I was just talking about. So really pulling all the metrics that I could find under one single view. The things that are harder to see are at the bottom is request durations at 90th, 95th, and 99th percentiles. And then that same library was able to be used to like build one of the dashboards that I have for this project. So being able to like reuse some of those pre-built metrics and graphs without needing to sit down and write them all for that project. So some of the future works that I have for this is to continue working with open source program offices to iterate on the solution. I've been working really heavily with Dwayne O'Brien from Indeed, even kind of after leaving, to kind of make the solution a lot better and a little bit more ubiquitous. And I'm looking for the same information. The nice thing
Maya, are you? Oh, I think you're breaking up a lot, Maya, again. Okay, I think I can. Can you hear me? Okay. Maya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. It sounds like we're having some breakup issues with your audio feed, sadly. But I think we were all able to listen up to the part that you were working after leaving with Indeed on making this more usable and applicable to other programs, if I got that right. Oh, I think Maya left.
Hopefully she's just rejoining.
Yeah, I think she might try to reboot and rejoin. Cool. I just we can give it 1 minute or two to see if Maya comes back. Oh yay! Hi Maya.
I am in the process of like upgrading my home network, so I'm hoping this no longer happens in like 3 months. That was more or less the end of it. It was, if y'all wanted to get started, like feel free to reach out to me. I can kind of help point you the right way, but also like happy to answer questions now.
Awesome, great, and thank you so much for presenting this demo. I wanted to open the floor to everybody on this call to see if you had any feedback, any questions or comments for Maya, or in general to discuss these ideas.
Hi, Maya. I'm Sheena. I'm on the GRPC team, C++ team, she, her pronouns. The presentation was cutting out a lot in the beginning, so I kind of missed the places where you were using gRPC as client or server and what information you were getting when you were doing your breadth first research.
So I'm doing the full stack, end to end is gRPC. So that includes from like, the only case it isn't is like when I'm talking to the database. So that's just either like the MySQL or Postgres protocol. But kind of from the service layer back to the client. So the command line tool that I have in place actually uses gRPC instead of going through REST. But yeah, the information that I'm getting back from kind of like a breadth first search is that iteration of dependencies. So if you were to think about it, like all of your files say like, I need X, Y, and Z to be able to work. Very common problem is I want to take that and invert it, right? Like who's using X, who's using Y. And so the system really enables you to invert that really quickly. So in that example there of like who's using gRPC Go, we were able to see everything from like etcd to cockroachdb to Vitesse, so on and so forth. And so yeah, it's just iterating that graph of information in the back end.
Where are the servers and the clients running?
The clients on your desktop, so that dep CLI tool was just like running on my local machine, and then the servers are currently running out of DigitalOcean. But that will be changing because they've literally blown away my clusters twice now. So
Use Google Cloud.
I spent an hour trying to get a GKE cluster up and running like the morning after, and kind of gave up on that. So we'll see. I'm going to try out Scaleway tonight, and we'll see how that goes.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments about this demo? Okay, so I think I am going to break the big group into smaller rooms for discussion. Let me see if I can do that properly here.
So I have a quick question for Maya.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Maya, did you consider anything else along with gRPC? Any other technologies that you compared to see how it works?
Yes and no. Like I've been pretty heavily on this side of the world since, like I said, like I worked on Boxcar, so I was very familiar with things like Thrift and a lot of the alternative solutions that were out there at the time. And one of the one big draws to gRPC was the ability to kind of have this fully duplexed stream at my kind of disposal, at least when it came to kind of being able to do, we'll say like arbitrary protocols, right? So one of the other things that I had kind of played around with was like, how easy is it for me to implement something like Paxos using gRPC versus using, Thrift or something else? And like, what was kind of the overhead with each of those? And so I don't know. I've been on, like I said, I've evaluated a lot of things and looked at a lot of things. In the end, I think I wound up with GRPC because it was the thing I had a lot of expertise in. Like Boxcar was protobuf based, and so it was a very natural transition from Boxcar to GRPC. And then in addition to that, I was already really very familiar with HTTP2 and the underlying spec, and so it was a pretty natural transition.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Maya? Or comments?
Sorry, the presentation was choppy. I need to figure out what's going on.
It's okay. I think we got most of it. I don't have the ability, I just realized, to break out into rooms because apparently I'm not the host, as I said earlier. But I thought maybe we could have more of a group conversation or discussion. I thought that one topic of interest could be potentially kubecon North America taking place really soon. Are there any, have any of you submitted any sessions that focus on gRPC, maybe, or are looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm giving a talk on gRPC and proxy-less service mesh support on kubecon, and I can send a link here if anyone is interested.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, we can look at different ways of promoting that, hopefully.
Thanks.
So can you tell us more about the session you're presenting?
So this is the link to the talk. Yeah, so this will be about the new service, proxy-less service mesh support inside gRPC that we're working on right now. So we'll talk about how to run a service mesh with gRPC without the need of a proxy in between. So things like that. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Has anybody else considered submitting a session, or I'm just curious to learn if there are any blockers or what keeps you from submitting a session, aside from the fact that it's November in a very, very stressful year. And probably that's it. I don't know.
And I know that I had more or less like given up on them after, I think it was like I did one like way back earlier in the year. I'm just like, and if I want to do this, I'll just record something and put it on YouTube. So I don't know. I've thought about some for next year.
Cool.
April is also have a good point because like we have our own conference now as well. So this last year was our own.
Yeah.
Like our second year. So.
Yeah, I found that sometimes more focused events tend to have more, outcomes more aligned with what the project contributors are looking for. So that makes sense. Great. So anybody else would like to like share any other topic that you would like to discuss as a community for gRPC? There wasn't a lot added to the agenda. There was only one question, but I don't really see the person who submitted this, apparently Lei Wang. I don't think it's in the call.
I put something in there. I think everybody here is, at this point, aside from Maya, on the GRPC team. But I put something in the notes about there's a plan to migrate the website to a Doxy template, which, if you're familiar with like the Kubernetes website and a couple of other websites are using it. So I just put it there just for people to see and just be aware that it's a thing that is likely going to happen. It is not going to look different. I know we are tired of redesigning websites, but this is part of Patrice's work with Docs and trying to get things better. So I just wanted to call it out. I'd asked him to, kind of put the proposal. I didn't feel like we needed to do a full GRFC, but, to just do kind of a similar proposal for people to take a look at and see. So the link's in there if you are interested.
Thank you, April.
So are we planning to do this on a monthly basis, or what's the frequency going to be?
The meetup, yes, on a monthly basis. And I am going to share, let me see if I grab the right link. I'm going to share a survey because I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you have any ideas of things that you would like to add to the community meetup, I would love to hear about that as well. And just, let us know how you liked it. And again, if you have something that you would like to demo, please do reach out to me or add it to the agenda doc. And I would love to schedule some other presentations. So the idea is to do this once a month.
Yeah, I think we're, if you didn't see yet, apparently the grpc.io mailing list got banned. So I think that impacted some of the calendar invites for this one. But yeah, once we get, more of a consistent routine going, hopefully we'll get more of the community folks, taking part in scheduling demos and things like that. Maria is awesome, and this is a great model that she's done with a couple of other projects, and I'm very excited that she's able to do that for GRPC.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya, and your sweet pup for being our first presenters. He's just sitting behind you, staring at the camera like, yeah, it's all about me.
Oh, he knows as soon as this call's over, he's going to the bathroom, so.
Great. Awesome. So I think I am going to post the recording now. And
you won't be